The Trump administration continues to make drastic changes at the Justice Department, including reassigning more than a dozen senior career lawyers in the Civil Rights Division. The division is now charged with pursuing priorities laid out in a series of Trump executive orders, including keeping men out of women's sports and ending radical indoctrination in K-12 schooling. That is according to memos obtained by NBC News. The Trump administration got a setback on that second so-called priority today. A federal judge in New Hampshire blocked directives from the Department of Education threatening to cut federal funding for public schools with diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, DEI. Andrew Weissman is back with me. Let's just level set here. Traditionally, what has the Civil Rights Division been focused on?
So they look in general at the federal level with sort of systemic racism issues. They look at police departments that may have a history and where there's a wide prevalence of racism or policies that have enormous disparate impact on race and national origin or religion. And they take action after lots of due process.
These changes were implemented by the new division head, Harmeet Dillon, who Democracy Docket describes as since the founding of her namesake law firm in 2006, Dillon has become one of the leading legal figures working instead to roll back voting rights across the country. And the reason I point that out is because they knew what they were doing, right? This is now part of a long-term plan. They installed her there specifically so she could run this culture wars playbook.
Yeah, and this is not something that's surprising. This is Project 2025 signaled all of this. And this is something that we've seen. It is interesting that you have really the dismantling of such key parts of the Civil Rights Division at the same time that, going to the hypocrisy point that we were just talking about, that you have the administration using anti-Semitism as the purported reason for going after Columbia and Harvard and other academic institutions when you don't see that sort of in the Civil Rights Division as part of the playbook. And so, again, that's the kind of thing you look to and say, is this a ruse? Because you don't see a sort of consistent pattern on the part of the administration saying we want to take this seriously.
There's the abandoning of what the Civil Rights Division has traditionally done. There is the new playbook that they're running. I am also intrigued by how it is that they're doing it. It was well articulated by a former senior official in the division who told NBC News this is a 180 shift from the division's traditional mission. The official added, and this is the part I thought was interesting, these documents appear to have been created in a vacuum, completely divorced from reality. The division can only enforce statutes that have been passed by Congress. And these orders seem to contemplate division attorneys executing on work that fundamentally departs from the division's long-standing mission. I mean, we're watching this administration sort of run around, do a runaround around congressional authority, and this seems like yet another example.
Yeah, that's a great point. So in terms of the enforcement, in terms of how the administration is going to enforce the laws that Congress set down, their elections matter, and elections have consequences, and that's one where our audience may agree or disagree. I suspect disagree with a lot of it, but that's not illegal. That's something that you can make a judgment that that's not something I do not support. I think that that's the wrong policy. You're raising a sort of more fundamental problem, which is that the president has to stay within the bounds of what Congress has set, assuming it has been found to be constitutional. He can't set new and different rules. And so that's one of the reasons that these efforts to so-called eradicate DEI, I think just today you have two separate judges issuing temporary restraining orders saying, that what the administration is trying to do is something that may, in fact, violate the law. It doesn't provide due process. And there's nothing about the terms. I'm going to sort of channel Judge Beryl Howell, where she said there's nothing dirty or evil about the words diversity, equity, inclusion. She challenged the government lawyer to say, what exactly is the problem with the diversity. You're for diversity when it comes to veterans. Is that an improper diversity, equity, and inclusion? Is that something that you're against?
They want to diversify the Fulbright scholarships so that women want to have more babies because they get a extra dispensation if they are married and have kids. You said to me when you and I were talking between the break about the first story, which is Act Blue, that they just sort of keep moving the markers and such that it can sort of culturally become like, well, like nothing seems that extreme. Nothing seems that out of step. And this seems like yet another example of that, right? Which is like, yeah, well, they're in charge now, and this is what they were elected to do. Who cares about the fact that they are just absolutely trampling on civil rights, not protecting them?
Yeah, so let me maybe give you an example from today's opinion. That is Dabney.
Which one?
This is Dabney Friedrich enjoining one of the DEI efforts by the president. And this is a judge who was appointed by Donald Trump in his first term. And when she is talking about it, she is saying, and she's trying to say, what is so wrong with this? And have you set a clear marker? Or are you really trying to, and this is me, not her, saying, are you really just trying to say that there's no such thing as racism and a systemic racism? And she said, would it be improper for there to be courses taught by professors who promote the view that systemic racism exists and that race can be central to one's experiences and identity? Would that be unlawful? Does a school's Black pre-law student union, open to all students, nonetheless treat Black students differently on the basis of race? What she's saying is trying to force the government to say, I want to know exactly what your position is, and don't be gray or ambiguous about it. And then the reason is that she's entitled to then look at that and say, I'm looking at what Congress has said, and I'm looking at what the Supreme Court has said about the Constitution, and I will measure what you specifically want to do against those, not against your unilateral view as to what you think is appropriate. Because, yes, the president has lots of power. Yes, the executive has lots of power, but they have to stay within those rules.